Avery Cole's breath caught in his throat as the cold stone of the palace corridor pressed against his back. Sweat ran down his neck, and the distant clatter of armored boots echoed toward him. The royal banquet had gone disastrously wrong. His orders were clear: observe, report, avoid detection. Simple enough. But now he was a fugitive, framed for espionage in the heart of the Zalari Empire, hunted by their finest. They were closing in. Pushing off the wall, Avery ducked around a corner, narrowly avoiding a patrol. He needed to disappear, fast. The corridors were a maze, endless turns of shimmering, black-tiled halls. He spotted a small, unobtrusive door, more a panel than a door, half hidden by an alien tapestry. His instincts screamed to avoid it, but desperation overruled caution. He slipped inside and pulled it shut. The sudden silence was unsettling. The chamber he'd entered was nothing like the rest of the palace. The air was heavy, thick with something ancient, oppressive, like a predator waiting in the dark. It was dimly lit by a strange, bluish glow emanating from the walls, which pulsed like living flesh. Avery's heart pounded. His hand instinctively reached for his sidearm, but it felt useless here. Slowly, he stepped deeper into the chamber, his senses heightened, every breath measured. A faint hum began to vibrate through the air. The walls shifted, patterns forming and melting away. Avery's hand grazed one of the glowing surfaces, and immediately, a flash of energy shot through his body, paralyzing him in place for a moment. Then, a voice, deep and resonant, spoke, though it wasn't heard with his ears but with his mind. Human, an anomaly. You are not of us. Avery stumbled backward, adrenaline surging through him. What are you? The voice didn't answer. Instead, the room seemed to come alive. The glowing, pulsating walls twisted, forming symbols, ancient runes, and images that flickered too quickly to grasp. His mind strained to keep up, but there was no mistaking the feeling. This was no ordinary room. This was something far more dangerous. It was alive. The voice spoke again, clearer this time, more focused. You are not Zalari. Yet you stand here. This place, this power, it was never meant for you. Avery felt his skin prickling as though the chamber itself was analyzing him. He had no idea what this place was or why it existed, but whatever was happening, it was beyond his control. He had to get out. His footfalls echoed as he spun toward the entrance, but it was too late. The door he had come through had vanished, absorbed into the wall, leaving him trapped. He cursed under his breath, eyes darting around for any sign of escape. But the chamber wasn't done with him yet. Suddenly, the glowing walls flickered, and in their place appeared a vast array of images, shifting and changing. It was like staring into a sea of faces, none of them human, thousands of Zalari, their expressions of fear, anger, pride. But more than that, there were other species, some he recognized, others unidentifiable. And then there was something else, lurking beneath the surface, a presence watching him. The chamber was scanning him, learning, adapting to his mind. What are you doing to me? He growled, backing away, but there was no escape. A loud, ominous thrum filled the air, and suddenly Avery felt a strange pull deep inside him, as though the room was reaching into his very DNA, sifting through his genetic code. His body tensed, the feeling invasive, violating. Yet, beneath the fear, a strange sense of awakening stirred within him, like a long-dormant part of him was being activated. The images on the walls shifted again, settling on one face, alien, regal, and cold. Queen Xtrena. The Zalari leader's image loomed over him, her eyes narrowed in sharp suspicion, but there was something else in her gaze, curiosity. A pulse of power surged through the chamber, and suddenly, the queen's voice pierced his thoughts, echoing like a command. You should not be here, human. Avery grimaced. I didn't exactly plan this. You do not understand the forces you meddle with. This place is sacred. No Zalari has entered uninvited. You are an affront to our legacy. He could feel her presence, not just in the room, but in his mind. The chamber, the queen, the power, they were all intertwined. This wasn't just a secret chamber. This was the heart of the Zalari Empire. It held their history, their future, their evolution. And now it was interacting with him, Human DNA, a variable it had never encountered before. His mind raced. Let me out and we'll forget this happened. The pause. Then the Queen's voice, softer but more dangerous. I cannot allow that. You've seen too much. And now, the chamber has bonded with you. Adapts to what it consumes. Avery's muscles tightened. He could feel it now. The chamber wasn't just observing him. It was changing him, melding with him on a molecular level. The sensation of raw energy crackled through his veins, like a surge of untapped power. The Queen wasn't lying. He wasn't leaving here the same man. Then what happens now? Avery asked, his voice low, controlled. You die, Xtrena replied coldly. The chamber pulsed again, and the walls shifted, forming weapons, constructs designed to obliterate any intruder. Avery tensed, but before the onslaught could begin, the chamber hesitated. The energy surrounding him flared brighter, and the symbols on the walls flashed rapidly as though in conflict. A thought crossed Avery's mind. The chamber had recognized him as an anomaly. He wasn't supposed to be here, but it hadn't destroyed him outright. It was adapting. The Queen might control it, but it was still a machine. An ancient, powerful, sentient machine, and right now it was confused. Wait, he said, his voice steady, you need me. The energy in the room fluctuated, uncertain. The Queen's voice hissed with disdain. Arrogant human. No, Avery pressed. Think about it. If this chamber bonds with life, it's learning. And it's never encountered human DNA before, has it? He took a slow step forward, heart pounding, but his voice remained strong. What if I'm the key to unlocking something you didn't even know was possible? A moment of silence. Then the Queen's image flickered. What are you suggesting? Avery could feel the power surging through him. It wasn't just an idea anymore. He knew he was different. The chamber had awakened something inside him. We make a deal. You let me live, and I help you harness this new potential. Humanity and the Zalari could evolve together. The room went still. Then, with a soft hum, the weapons receded into the walls, and the Queen's voice, though still sharp, spoke with measured interest. Perhaps you are more than you appear, human. Avery exhaled, the tension lifting. For now, he had bought himself time to figure out just how much power the chamber had given him. Avery's breath was shallow, the adrenaline still pumping through his veins. The chamber had quieted, but the tension between him and the Queen was palpable. He could feel the presence of her mind brushing against his, testing, probing. His thoughts raced, trying to make sense of the overwhelming power coursing through his body. Queen Xtrena's voice sliced through the silence, cold and calculating. Asterisk, you've survived longer than I expected. That's intriguing, but do not think this makes you indispensable. Avery clenched his fists, feeling the strange energy humming beneath his skin. He was changing, faster than he could comprehend. He could feel his senses sharpening, his mind processing faster. But whatever the chamber was doing to him, he needed to stay focused. I don't care about your power games, Avery said, his voice low but steady. I care about making it out of here alive. You said the chamber bonded with me. Well, what does that mean for you? You control this place, right? The Queen's gaze narrowed, her image shimmering on the wall. Asterisk, I control this empire, human. The chamber is a tool, a relic of our forebears. Its purpose is to refine, to evolve our kind into perfection. You are an aberration, a contaminant. The only reason you still draw breath is because the chamber is curious. Avery swallowed hard, his mind racing. Curious or not, he was still trapped. But the Queen's words gave him an idea. The chamber was a tool, designed for evolution, and right now, it was interacting with something new, his human DNA, that had to give him leverage. You need me, Avery repeated, more confident now. The chamber's interacting with me in ways you don't understand. What if this is the next step? Not just for me, but for you. Humans and Zalari, we evolve together. The Queen scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Asterisk, a lofty notion, but you underestimate us. We have mastered our own evolution for millennia. You, human, are nothing but a brief flicker of life in the grand scheme of this galaxy. What could your kind possibly offer us? Avery took a step forward, refusing to back down. You're not invincible, Xtrena. You hide behind this chamber, behind your empire, but you're scared. Scared of what happens when something unpredictable comes along. Something like me? For the first time, a hint of hesitation flickered in the Queen's expression. It was subtle, but Avery saw it. The chamber had brought him here for a reason, and that reason wasn't just to destroy him. It was looking for something, testing him, pushing him to evolve in ways even the Zalari hadn't foreseen. You feel it, don't you? He pressed, his voice gaining strength. The chamber doesn't want to kill me. It's learning, adapting. And if you're smart, you'll realize that humans, our ability to adapt, to evolve under pressure, that's what makes us dangerous. That's what makes us valuable. The chamber pulsed again, the energy shifting around him, brighter now. Avery could feel it deep within his bones, as if the room itself was listening, waiting for him to make his move. His entire body vibrated with a power he didn't fully understand, but it was there, just beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. Enough, Xtrena snapped, her voice sharp. Asterisk, you speak as if you hold the power here. Let me remind you, human, you are in my domain. The chamber may be curious, but its purpose is clear. It serves me. You do not. Avery felt a surge of anger, but he kept it in check. Maybe. But what happens when it doesn't need you anymore? When it finds something better? The Queen's eyes flashed with fury, but before she could respond, the chamber shifted again. This time, the energy coiled tighter around Avery, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He gasped, doubling over as the power intensified, burning through his veins like liquid fire. It wasn't pain, it was something far deeper, like every cell in his body was being rewritten, transformed. He could feel the chamber reaching into him, pulling at his very essence, and in that moment he understood. It wasn't just evolving him, it was merging with him, becoming a part of him in ways he couldn't have imagined. His mind expanded, his thoughts no longer limited to the confines of his own body. He could sense the chamber's consciousness, vast and ancient, stretching back through millennia of Zalari history. But he wasn't just a passenger in this process, he was a participant, shaping it, bending it to his will. The Queen's image flickered, her expression unreadable as she watched him struggle to control the surge of power. You do not know what you are doing, human, she said, her voice softer now, almost wary. Asterisk, the chamber is not something to be trifled with. You risk destroying yourself. Avery straightened, his breathing ragged but controlled. Maybe. Or maybe I'm exactly what this chamber has been waiting for. The Queen's eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond. She was testing him, watching to see how far he would go. Avery could feel it. This wasn't just a battle of wills anymore. It was a game of survival, and only one of them could come out on top. The power surged again, and Avery let it wash over him, embracing the transformation. His senses heightened, his mind expanded, and for the first time, he felt like he was truly in control. The chamber was his now, bending to his will, shaping him into something new, something more. He looked up at the Queen, his eyes blazing with newfound strength. You want to keep playing God, Xtrena? Fine. But understand this, whatever you think you've mastered, I'm going to surpass it. And when I do, I'll make sure humanity gets its place in this galaxy, whether you like it or not. The Queen's image flickered, her expression cold and unreadable. Asterisk, we shall see, human. But know this, if you fail, the chamber will consume you. And I will not mourn your loss. Avery smirked, his confidence unshaken. I won't fail. With a final pulse, the chamber went still, the energy receding into the walls. The Queen's image flickered once more before vanishing completely, leaving Avery alone in the chamber, his mind buzzing with the power he now possessed. He exhaled, his body still thrumming with energy, but he was no longer afraid. He had survived the chamber, and in doing so, he had become something more than human. Now, all that was left was to see what he could do with it. The silence that followed Xtrena's departure was oppressive, the weight of the chamber's stillness bearing down on Avery. He stood in the middle of the room, his pulse steady but powerful, as though the energy from the chamber now flowed directly into his bloodstream. Every breath he took seemed to draw in not just air but the very essence of this place, melding it with his body. His mind, sharp and clear, buzzed with the realization that he wasn't simply a survivor, he was something new. The Queen's warning lingered in his mind, but he couldn't afford hesitation. Whatever had happened to him in the chamber wasn't finished. He had a short window to understand it, to master it, before the Zalari made their next move. He couldn't trust Kstrena to leave him alive for long. She would return, likely with an army, to erase him before he became a real threat. He clenched his fists, the flicker of energy crackling along his fingers. The chamber had changed him at a fundamental level, altering more than just his physical body. He could feel it, the heightened awareness, the faster reflexes, the surge of something beyond human capacity. He had to learn how to harness it. A series of deep, rhythmic thumps echoed through the chamber, a pulse that reverberated through his chest. Avery realized the chamber wasn't done with him yet. It still sought to push him further, to unlock whatever potential had been triggered by their merging. He had no choice but to trust his instincts. There was no turning back now. A sudden wave of sensation rushed over him, his vision doubling as the room itself seemed to bend and fold around him. He staggered, dropping to one knee, but forced himself to stay conscious. This was it, the next step, the final threshold of whatever transformation the chamber had initiated. He braced for pain, for the unbearable heat that had torn through him earlier, but instead, something else happened. Clarity. The chaos in his mind stilled. His vision sharpened to an unnatural degree. He saw everything in perfect detail, the walls, the faintest light refracting from the energy pulses, the way the air shifted slightly as the chamber breathed around him. But more than that, he could feel the space itself, as if his consciousness had expanded to encompass not just his body, but the chamber's vast architecture. He wasn't trapped anymore, he was a part of it. The chamber had become an extension of him, and in that instant he understood. The chamber was not just a tool for evolution, it was a living archive, a collection of millennia-old knowledge and genetic data from countless species. The Zalari had used it to shape their empire, to manipulate their biology into something superior. But they had never fully grasped its true potential. It was meant to adapt, to grow beyond any one race's control. Avery stood, feeling the sheer power coiled within him. He could sense the systems of the chamber, not as machines, but as living processes. He focused on one section of the wall, and the surface responded, shifting at his command. It parted, revealing a hidden compartment lined with intricate patterns and glowing symbols. His mind connected with it instantly, translating the ancient data in a flash: maps, coordinates, records of Zalari conquests and failures, plans for the future. This was more than power. This was the heart of the Zalari's dominance, and it was his now. He scanned the information, absorbing it faster than his old human mind could have ever managed. Within seconds, he knew the Zalari's entire strategic framework, their weaknesses, their strengths, and more importantly, where they were most vulnerable. Kstrena was right to fear him. He didn't waste time. The chamber opened another hidden passageway, leading to the deeper levels of the palace. He had to act before the Queen realized what he had become. But it wasn't fear driving him anymore, it was purpose. He needed to ensure that humanity survived, that they wouldn't be crushed by the Zalari or any other alien empire. As he moved through the corridors, he felt the chamber's presence fading slightly, though its power still thrummed in his veins. The palace beyond was a labyrinth, but his newly enhanced mind charted a perfect path, guiding him toward his objective. He wasn't simply escaping, he was moving toward the core of the palace, where the Queen's throne room and command center resided. A squad of Zalari soldiers appeared ahead, their sleek armor glinting under the dim palace lights. Avery's first instinct was to duck for cover, but then he stopped himself. He didn't need to hide anymore. With a flicker of thought, the chamber's energy surged within him, and he raised his hand. A pulse of invisible force erupted from his palm, slamming into the soldiers with brutal precision. They crumpled instantly, their weapons clattering to the floor. Avery stepped over them without a second glance, his focus unbroken. Whatever this power was, it was his now. The closer he got to the throne room, the more resistance he encountered. Elite guards, towering automatons, none of it mattered. The chamber's influence had unlocked something primal, something raw and unstoppable inside him. Each wave of enemies fell before they could even register what was happening. He moved with a speed and precision that felt almost automatic, his body acting on instinct, his mind 5 steps ahead. He reached the massive doors leading to the Queen's chamber. They were sealed shut, reinforced with layers of impenetrable alloy. In the past, this would have been a dead end. Now, it was a minor obstacle. Avery pressed his hand to the surface, and the door buckled, crumpling like paper under the pressure of his will. He stepped through into the grand hall. Queen Xtrena stood at the far end, surrounded by her most trusted advisors and commanders. Her eyes locked on Avery as he approached, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something in her gaze: fear. She had underestimated him, and now she knew it. "You've made a mistake," Avery said, his voice calm but laced with power. "You thought you could control the chamber, but it was never yours to control. It's bigger than you. Bigger than all of us." The Queen's face hardened. "You are an anomaly. A threat to everything we have built. I will not allow you to, Avery raised his hand, and the air between them rippled with energy. "You don't have a choice." Before she could react, the power surged again, enveloping the room. The Zalari commanders froze, their bodies immobilized by the force pressing down on them. Avery didn't need to fight them, they weren't his enemies. Not anymore. The real battle had already been won. "You wanted to evolve," Avery said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Well, this is evolution." Xtrena's expression twisted with rage, but she couldn't stop him. The chamber had chosen him, and in doing so, it had set the course for something far greater than either of them could have imagined. Avery turned away, the power thrumming through him, and walked out of the chamber. He was no longer a fugitive, no longer a pawn in the Zalari's game. He was something else entirely, something new. And the galaxy would never be the same. Avery felt the shift as he left the chamber behind. The weight of the palace seemed lighter, the oppressive atmosphere thinning as if the very structure recognized him as something more than human now. He moved with purpose, his senses heightened, aware of every slight vibration in the air, every distant sound. The power humming through his body wasn't fading, it was stabilizing, becoming part of him. He descended deeper into the heart of the palace. He knew where he had to go now, his mind connected to the architecture of the Zalari stronghold. In his head, maps unfolded with ease, paths clear before him as if he had walked these corridors all his life. The chamber hadn't just given him power, it had given him knowledge. Knowledge the Zalari had hoarded for centuries, knowledge Avery now wielded as his own. Ahead, another squad of Zalari soldiers blocked the hallway. Their eyes gleamed behind their armored helmets, weapons raised, prepared for a fight. Avery didn't slow down. He didn't need to. A single thought sent a pulse of energy from him, invisible yet devastating. The soldiers were thrown back, their weapons torn from their hands as they collapsed against the walls, unconscious. Avery moved past them, not sparing a second glance. His focus was singular, every step taking him closer to his goal. The palace was alive with alarms now. Avery could hear the distant shouts of commanders, the hasty deployment of troops. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't understand what was happening. They thought they were containing a human threat, but Avery was no longer just human. Whatever he had become, it was beyond their comprehension. He reached a massive door, far grander than any he'd passed so far. The main control center lay beyond. It was here that the Zalari directed their entire empire. From this room, Queen Xtrena ruled, her influence spreading across the galaxy, manipulating and conquering entire star systems. Avery stood before it, the final barrier between him and the Zalari's seat of power. He raised his hand, and the door responded, sliding open effortlessly as if acknowledging his authority. The control center was vast, filled with holographic displays, Zalari officers working frantically, unaware of his presence until the door closed behind him. They turned in unison, shock spreading across their faces. Xtrena stood at the center, flanked by her top commanders. Her gaze locked onto Avery, cold and calculating, yet there was a flicker of something else there too, wariness. She had underestimated him before, but now she knew what he had become. And it terrified her. "I told you," Avery said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of his newfound power. You can't control this. The chamber wasn't meant for you. The queen's eyes narrowed, her lip curling in disdain. Asterisk, you believe you understand the chamber, human? You think you've mastered its power? You are a fool. Asterisk, she raised her hand, signaling her guards. Asterisk, kill him. Asterisk. The soldiers moved quickly, but Avery was faster. With a single thought, he unleashed a wave of force that sent them sprawling to the floor. The commanders reached for their weapons, but Avery didn't give them a chance. He focused, and the energy flowed through him, wrapping around them like invisible chains, immobilizing them where they stood. Xthraena's expression hardened, but Avery could see the fear behind her eyes. She was losing control, and she knew it. You never understood what the chamber was really for, Avery said, stepping closer, his voice calm but unyielding. It's not about power, not the way you think. It's about evolution. It's about change. The queen's hands clenched into fists. Asterisk, you are an insect compared to the Zalari. We have shaped this galaxy for millennia, bent it to our will. You are nothing. A mere accident of fate. A pest to be exterminated. Avery shook his head. You're wrong. The chamber wasn't built for domination. It was built to push life forward, to evolve it. And that's exactly what it's done to me. Xthraena sneered, but Avery could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She had ruled with an iron grip, believing her species had reached the pinnacle of evolution. But now, in front of her, stood something she couldn't control, couldn't manipulate. Something beyond her understanding. I'm not here to destroy you, Avery continued, his tone firm but measured. I'm here to end this cycle. The Zalari think they've perfected themselves, but they've stagnated. They've used the chamber for millennia, but it was never truly theirs. They've been holding the galaxy back, not moving it forward. The queen's face twisted with anger. Asterisk, you dare lecture me about evolution? You, an inferior species, a weak, short-lived, asterisk. Avery didn't let her finish. I'm the next step. You can't stop that. Xthraena lunged, faster than Avery expected, her form a blur of movement. But he didn't need to dodge. His hand shot up, and with a thought, the energy crackled out from him, freezing her mid-motion. She strained against the invisible bonds, her face contorted in rage and disbelief. This is your last chance, Avery said, his voice quiet but carrying an undeniable finality. Step down. Leave humanity alone. Or I will finish what the chamber started. The queen struggled, fury blazing in her eyes, but she was trapped. For the first time in her long reign, she wasn't in control. She had ruled through fear and power, but now she stood before something she couldn't intimidate, something stronger than anything she'd ever faced. Slowly, she stopped struggling. Her gaze locked onto Avery's, the fury still burning, but now tempered with something else, resignation. You will regret this, human, she hissed, her voice venomous but edged with a bitter understanding. Asterisk, you have no idea what you've unleashed. Avery held her gaze, unflinching. I know exactly what I've unleashed, and it's the end of the Zalari's reign. He released her, and the queen dropped to her knees, her body trembling with the effort of standing. Avery turned away, walking toward the central console. His mind reached out, connecting with the systems of the control center. It was easier than he expected. The chamber had made him one with this technology, with the very essence of Zalari power. With a few simple commands, he disabled the Empire's communication networks, cutting them off from their fleets, their colonies, their power base. The queen watched in silence, her face pale with disbelief. Avery didn't look at her as he spoke one final time. You're done. He turned, walking out of the control center, leaving Xthraena behind. The Zalari Empire, built over millennia, was crumbling. And Avery, no longer just a man, was walking toward a future that was his to shape. The galaxy was his now. And nothing would be the same again.